Hello, my name is Paul Shelley, and welcome to the AstroHistorian Live. This is a channel dedicated to exploring and explaining the lore of sci-fi and space universes and discussing their impact. Today, we are going to be covering the system of Squadron 42, Odin. Welcome to an AstroHistorian Live. This is a live stream that I do semi-frequently. I try to do it at least once or twice a month, where we talk about some aspect of lore, usually Star Citizen Squadron 42, and then also take questions from the audience. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, Dealer. Welcome, Ghost. War Skeptica. Someone asked, War Skeptica asks, I like this music. Where can I find it? So this music is not for public release. It is made by the wonderful and awesome, let me see if I can get, I always screw up his name. One. All right. Utho Riley. I don't know if it's Riley or Rayleigh, but it's Utho. Utho is an independent artist, this up here, who does both of the intros, the original intro and the exit to it. At the time of streaming, it's 1 a.m. UK time, but I'm up and ready for this because I'm interested in everything Squadron 42. Is it 1 a.m. UK time? That probably is pretty late. I apologize. I am back to work. For those of you who don't know, my day job is a teacher. So I teach high school, social studies, history, economics, government. I have a degree in history, and I like to do lore stuff. So. Y'all are up insane. It's only we're gonna be pretty short, only about an hour or so. So, we're gonna pull up the latest information from the Squadron 42 newsletter. They just released it. This is what they released. So this is a little bit more in depth than what we've had in the past. But a lot of this stuff is stuff that's simply been well known in the Star Citizen universe for a bit. Do my students know I do this? Yes and no. They know that I do it. I don't tell them my name because I don't want that conflict of interest. I mostly tell them that I do videos on YouTube and stream on YouTube and Twitch. And mostly because I know a lot of kids these days want to go into that sort of field, and I want to like dispel notions of grandeur as well as to help them if they really want to do this, to know that they really they really have to want this in order to do it for a living. Because I don't even do it for a living. And to be quite honest, I don't make a lot of money off of this. I do this for the love of the game. It's nice though. The money helps for sure, but nowhere near even my peers in the Star Citizen community. So the setting of Squadron 42 is set in Odin, is system in 2946, a year after the Battle of Vega, right? We don't know exactly when. We know it's after the Battle of Vega. We know the Battle of Vega is the prologue, which we've seen in last year's CitizenCon. There is some new lore. Fortune's Cross specifically hasn't been mentioned in the past, and the Asiato Station hasn't been mentioned. We know that it existed, but we didn't know what it was supposed to do. So we're basically going to be doing an overview of this, of what we know, and then we're going to go through this and sort of add the connecting tissue to it. But what I can tell you about Squadron 42 is that it takes place after the Battle of Vega. where you are a rookie pilot being sent into the UES Stanton, United Earth Empire ship. Yeah, Stanton. And you're sent to the Odin system as part of peacetime, wartime patrol. The Odin system is a part of the UEE. It is a very strange part of the UEE because I do not know if it has representation. It's owned by the UEE, and I don't believe it has representation, but it does have a large amount of scientific research and as well as weapons research. Hey, Luna. Lore video? Sort of. Lore live stream. Lore live stream. Do you see new armor in 4.3 is the OMC armor? Pretty cool starting to see what OMC has. Nice little teaser for Squadron. Yes, for those of you who don't know, OMC is a company. OMC stands for Odin's Munitions Corporation. And the Odin's Munitions Corporation was building weapons and armor for the UEE up until fairly recently when a rebellion took place within the workforce and it became an outlaw gang. So it's important to note that the OMC is part outlaw gang, part labor union gone rogue. These are not like just straight up evil bad guys. They're doing things for a political cost. The Stanton is an Idris frigate. Yes, that's a Flight 3 Idris. It was laid down in 2880 something. So it's important to note that Stanton, all Idrises are named after UEE systems, as far as we know. They'll likely increase that because there's not enough UEE systems, and there's probably a lot more Idrises out there. But Stanton system wasn't discovered until the 2850s. So the Stanton at the time was a rather new ship. So a gang with its own mini military industrial complex? Yes. Yep, that's what OMC stands for, Odin Munitions Corporation. For Star Citizen, the Star Citizen universe, I know many of you who are just excited for Squadron 42, and that's what I'm here for, but it's also important to note that Squadron 42 and Star Citizen take place in the same universe. Squadron 42 is in the past, as of now, it's 2940s, and the current year in Star Citizen is 2955. So it'll be about 10 years before the events when it releases next year, if it releases next year. So I think it's going to, but yeah, that ONC armor that was coming in 431 is it's not just Squadron 42 themed. It's probably an actual armor piece that the OMC produced before they were they turned into what they are today. How many systems are in the UEE that we know of? I don't have the exact number, but it's somewhere in the 30s. 30, like mid 30s. There are lots of systems in the UEE that are not members of the UEE, but still have human populations, like Oberon and Nyx and Pyro, for those of you who play Star Citizen, know Pyro. But also places like Hadrian. Well, Hadrian's UE system, even though it doesn't have representation. Tohill is another one. There's plenty of systems that do not have... Oh, Null is another good system. Most of these systems still have UEE presences in some way, but they're run independently. So you can think of them as independent polities outside of the UEE, which have, in some cases, a sort of relationship with the UEE. Not all of them are claimed by the UE. Null is actually not claimed by the UE at all. Neither is Nyx. Neither is Oberon, actually. But the UEE still expresses a sphere of influence over them. So you'll see UEE ships that'll come by and are mostly ignored. The few places that are not the case, up until recently, were places like Nexus and Pyro and Cathcart, because these were openly hostile to the UEE. And Cathcart, or Nexus, is its own unique system because the Nexus system is basically a quagmire. It is a system that they tried to remove all the outlaw presence in. And every time the UEE sends in Navy or advocacy forces, advocacy being the sort of police branch, they're kind of like the U.S. Marshals in the Wild West. And every time they send in a big military force or paramilitary force into the system to try to quell the problems, it just pops up again somewhere else in the system. Because it's located next to Cathcart, which is the kind of the capital, the pirate capital, the outlaw capital. The FBI with a strong touch of the Gestapo. Yeah, the FBI makes sense, but it's important to note that while the advocacy does have like field agents and like actual members of its branch, the main force, the main like controlling factor for every system is a special agent in charge. And very rarely do you see multiple advocacy agents in the same system. So, for instance, for us in Star Citizen, Stanton has special agent in charge Rowena Dooley. In the Odin system, it's Agent Trejo. Rebecca Trejo. Space Tortuga, yeah. Nyx doesn't have an agent because Nyx isn't part of the UEE. That's not going to stop the UEE from trying. We'll talk about that here in a moment. Do you think humanity would end up like the UEE or would end up like the UFP in Star Trek? If we're talking about in reality, I don't know. The problem with the UEE is that it is not a good thing. The UEE is a failing empire at the end of its longest reign. It is slowly slipping away into obscurity. Really, humanity has had 4 empires in terms of interstellar empires. The first was the United Nations of Earth, which then transformed into the United Planets of Earth, basically fell and it was replaced, though it was more of a peaceful transition. And then there was the violent transition of the Mezer UEE, or the Mezer regime, which coined the UEE in the first place. And then there was another violent regime takeover when the Mezer era fell, when the Mezer UEE fell, and the new UEE rose. Now, the new UEE rose in 2792. And so it's coming up on the ye olde rule of empires, which is about 250 years. So we're not quite to 200 years, but we're in that middle stage where a lot of stuff is starting to fall apart. So the story of Squadron 42 is this big action adventure story set in the backdrop of a political entity which is coming apart at the seams. Political bickering and infighting run rampant, violent and clandestine actions are being taken through, proxy groups being funded by one group or the other. Well, that's the thing. We know of the plans because the UEE is likely to split into 2 distinct groups. The UEE headquartered in Earth and the UEE likely renamed the Democratic Stellar Union headquartered on Terra. In lore, they call it the East-West Divide, which is pretty much directed down the middle from where Stanton is currently, where the system of Stanton is. I'm assuming we're gonna have to push to get Nyx to remain independent. Then is that a in-game event, right? Possibly. We do know that there is. I will play this. This is not related directly to it, but we are going to talk a little bit about it because we're going to talk about the Second Life initiative to sort of highlight that aspect, and then we'll jump deeper into Odin. So these are audio files which were harvested from one of the latest updates for a in-game news alert system for Squadron, not for Squadron, for Star Citizen. I'm assuming most of you are Star Citizen fans as well, not just the lone Star Squadron 42. I'm like, what's Star Citizen? But I can never anticipate who's watching this in 2 years' time. So I'm gonna pull that up so you can have a kind of an idea of what's going on. All right. So these are news flashes specifically about Nyx.
This is James Harriman with your SSN News Flash. Shocking news coming out of the Nyx system as authorities announced they have identified the group responsible for selling Vanduul bodies to Associated Science and Development's experiments under Dr. Logan Yoret. The group, calling themselves the Shattered Blade, have operated as black market dealers of contraband, specifically alien technology. Now, military officials have expressed concern that the activities of the Shattered Blade are potentially antagonizing hostilities with the Vanduul and could instigate incursions into UEE systems. Authorities have been looking for more information about this group and those that have been subsidizing their activities. We'll keep you posted as the story develops. That's our newsflash. See you next time.
All right, and then the next newsflash.
Welcome to another SSN Newsflash. I'm James Harriman. The UEE has met with High Command to discuss how to handle the increasing Vanduul presence in the Nyx system, as well as the continued activity from the Shattered Blade. Multiple activist groups have called for the Imperator and Senate to meet with the People's Alliance to discuss potential incorporation into the UEE. Now, supporters have suggested that the People's Alliance are ill-equipped to handle a sustained Vanduul presence in the system and want to extend an olive branch, while critics question whether they would want to join the empire they fled or how the UEE would incorporate the unusual governing structure that they operate under. While Imperator Addison has maintained that regardless of their status within the UEE, the people of Levski are our allies. Be sure to check out SSN's live coverage of the Senate debates for further details. We're out of time. See you next time on Newsflash.
Now, it's important to note that Nyx is a very important system in Squadron as well. Nyx borders the Odin system and has a jump point from Nyx to Odin. It also has to Kellogg and Tanga, but Kellogg is sort of a weird border world. I think that's where the Supermax prison quarterdeck is, but it's also a protected system. And Tanga, I don't think is much of a system at all. I might be wrong on that one. I don't think it's not really a notable system in terms of presence. Nyx is probably the most well-known, and it has the longest population, but it is independent and highly independent. They are formed from groups of rebels from the Mezzer regime who fled Terra to a remote mining outpost in the Nyx system called, on an asteroid named Delamar. The outpost was called Levski. It had been abandoned by the time they showed up. And so they reclaimed the abandoned station and then refit it for their own purposes and turned it into a pretty well-working kind of way station for people traveling through the area. In fact, keeping pirate and outlaw activity at a minimum because they mostly just wanted to stay off the radar. They felt as long as they were small beans, they wouldn't get crushed. And that seemed to work. And then after the fall of the Mezzer regime, they still didn't join the UEE because they felt that the UEE was still the same sort of corrupt regime that they were fleeing in the first place. So there's sort of a independent polity separate from the UEE. So the idea that the UEE is trying to encourage Nyx's acquisition into the UEE may not go so well. That is not something you'd probably want to try to do. They've been independent for almost 250 years. Yes. But the thing is that this is probably the biggest reason why the UE wants to incorporate them is because the Vanduul are threatening to invade. And ever since Vega, the UEE has taken an active role in trying to cover systems that have been threatened by Vanduul incursion. The Oberon, the battle for Oberon, I can't remember the name of it, someone will tell me the operation, was one of the largest fleet deployments in UEE history, which takes place the year after the Battle of Vega. And it's the introduction of the UEE's largest warship ever created, called the Retribution. This is a super dreadnought, which we have no idea how many guns or what size guns this thing has, other than some images we've seen of what look like at least 6 or 7 Goliath shipbuster railguns, clusters, not 6 or 7 guns, clusters, which each have like 6 on them, on the exterior of the ship, plus a giant tuning fork, which looks oddly like a giant railgun, possibly a planet-cracking the planet-destroying weapon or planet-cracking weapon discovered in the ruins of the old civilization which once inhabited the system of Hades. That is pure speculation on my part. I did an entire video on that one. But with that arrival in the Oberon system, that was Admiral Bishop basically saying that wherever the UEE or wherever the Vanduul show up, the UEE must counter. So it's sort of UEE doctrine now to always go into systems that have humans in them or that have systems adjacent to them, even if the locals do not want them there. Because it's better to defend against the Vanduul than to let a system which isn't technically their polity be taken over and then allow for more invasion routes. Because each jump point becomes an invasion route. Yeah, that's where the fight for where the last stand of the Achilles took place, where one aging, like mothballed Perseus class gunboat stood up against like 3 Vanduul destroyers, took 2 of them out before it itself was damaged beyond repair, punching ridiculously above its weight class. But it did so well that Admiral Bishop stepped in and asked the UEE or asked RSI to rebuild the Perseus for a modern fights because of how well it did against the Vanduul. Nothing more convenient than a real threat to take over an independent system. Yes, it's important to remember that while Star Citizen and Squadron 42 are more based around, you know, fantasy and science fiction and that sort of traditional like escapist fantasy, CIG has built an undercurrent of political machinations throughout the entirety of the lore so that every action has a reaction and everything that's going on has a purpose. So, because the writers are nerds like myself who love this sort of thing. Well, don't worry, Owen, and especially for those of you who are late, this will be recorded on, left up on the AstroHistorian YouTube. So if you want to go to bed and wake up a little later, feel free to and watch it later. You can do that as well. It'll be interesting because Squadron seems to be UEE propaganda. I wonder if CIG will subvert that. It's not exactly that. For those of you who don't know, I know the entire high-level plot of Squadron 42. I accidentally leaked it to myself. I actually spoiled myself through other means, which it's complicated, but I was looking for another audio file and ended up going through files that had been leaked a long time ago and finding a bunch of audio files for Squadron, which I wasn't looking for, and then discovering the main plot twists by going through those files by accident. So I just said, well, I already know all the plot twists, so might as well learn more. So I kept listening to some of the audio files until I picked up basically the entire story. And it was also the mission titles were leaked a long time ago. So like the information's out there if you want to know the story. But I don't want to tell the story because I think it's better experience for the first time. So I'm going to be very careful when I talk about Squadron or Squadron content, just to leave it to what we know about in Star Citizen. But I will say that already mentioning that OMC, the Odin Munitions Corporation, is something that is well known, and its status is much more complicated than just we're the bad guys. he kept hitting yes when he asked, when he asked, do you want to know more? Well, yeah, that's the problem. That is me. Yeah. It's definitely going to be shades of gray. You're going to see elements of the effect that the Mezzers have left on humanity throughout most of the game. But it's sort of, you'll see some elements that are the tensions between the old UEE and the new UEE tearing at each other for the future, combined with the new existential threat of the Van Duel and the need to deal with the Van Duel at all costs. And emphasis on all costs. If the UE defeats the Van Duel, would they take over all of Van Duel's space? Depending on who you ask, probably. If the UE defeats the Van Duel, I believe the UE would genocide the Van. Mostly because, based off of the modern readings of Van Duel culture and Van Duel society, most humanity would effectively not see a reason to keep the Van Duel around, because if they did, they would simply return stronger and pose even worse of a threat if they were left to fester. Because Van Duel are not really the same sort of culture as you would expect from the other species in Star Citizen and the Squadron 42. Xi'an, for instance, are seen as a cold, calculating, distant threat, but they're still a civilization. They're still a society. They still act in rational ways that are designed specifically to protect themselves and their society from outside threats. The Banu, while very gregarious and open, are still also very self-centered. They're doing things to help themselves out and to help out their people, even if that people is a Suli, a small group of them. They still act within the best interests of that group. And the Tavaran, who've already been kind of incorporated into the UE, an ancient warrior race that we defeated twice, and then sort of he took over all their land and forced them into the UEE, still have sort of even in their most sort of wild outlaw states, have sort of an honor code that they live by. The Rajora is still somewhat practiced within even the most extreme elements of the Tavaran people. The Van Duel are not a united people. They're a series of warring clans whose entire culture is a meritocracy based off of violence. Not necessarily who's the strongest and the biggest who can hit the most or be the best warrior, but the best strategist, the best tactician, the one who can score the most victories with the least amounts of losses. And if they find a group that is worthy of fighting, they will seek out that group to try to test their mettle against that group, because each leader of a Van Duel clan is seeking a glorious victory. They don't care about civilian losses, so there's no such thing as a civilian to the Van Duel. And their entire society is built towards achieving higher successes in order to impress the higher-ups in their own clans, or even start their own clans, so that they can gain more reputation and power. So when you have that sort of fractured group of nomads who are constantly seeing the best challenge to win, humanity may see them as a fundamental and existential threat to the rest of the galaxy. Yeah, and the lessons that humanity would take, as Jay did point out, the UEE left the Tavaran after the First War, and then they got a surprise attack from the start of the Second War. They dismantled the Tavaran infrastructure after that and assimilated and denied the potential enemy a third chance. And so I doubt that the UEE would, the cold calculus of the UEE would probably say, this species is not, we cannot risk a second Van Duel war. We need to deal with this problem existentially and forever. And that's probably not going to sit well with probably half of humanity, because while the Van Duel are a threat, they're only a threat to a very small portion of the UEE, not the whole of the Empire. And that small portion is much more run down, and it's older and like more established, but it's not exactly the most economically viable areas of the Empire. Isn't it hinted the duel are running from something? Yes. There is a hint that they are actually being pushed out of their lands and forced into human lands for hunting. Because the Vanduul are based off of the Vandals and the Visigoths. Well, the Vandals and the Goths, which are sort of a steppe Germanic people who were forced out of their lands by the Huns, who then arrived in the Roman in Rome and tried to take it over. Also, xenocide is no bueno? Of course not. And as with science fiction as metaphor, you can definitely see where CIG is pulling from for these ideas. So basically, the Vanduul aren't going to be the big bad. The big bad will be whoever's pushing out the Vanduul. Possibly. There's no confirmation that there is a species pushing the Vanduul out. There's not even any hints of it in the lore. It's simply meta references by the developers themselves. But until that happens, we're almost certainly going to see at least the first 3 games of Squadron 42. And yes, there are going to be 3 games, because originally Squadron 42 was going to be 1 game until Aaron Roberts came into the picture and said, this is way too much for 1 game. Let's cut this out and make it 3 games. So as a result, they've extended out the first game. They've added some side content, or they took the first act of the game and kind of made it its own standalone story, and then part 2 and part 3 additionally extended and put in there. Lol, the big bad is humans. Yes. So we probably won't even see what's pushing the Vanduul out until at least a Squadron 42 part 4 or a Star Citizen expansion. All right. So, next I'm going to pull up the latest not monthly report, the jump point. All right, so this is what they used to call Congress now. These are transcripts from, it's still called Congress now, from the UEE Congress, also known as the UEE Senate. And we learned a couple of things here. For instance, the Senate does have a speaker, which I believe is elected by the Senate themselves. And as far as we know, and this is just the briefest of rundowns, there are 3 parties in the UEE. Not everyone is necessarily in a party. There are plenty of independent members of the Senate, but the majority of the UEE Congress is made up of one of 3 different parties. And the party that has the most members is typically the one that's in charge, that has the speakership. We just had an election, so I'm home from a party. Hey, speaking of elections, we're going to talk a little bit about some government politics. Oh yeah, I should probably change that title. I forgot to change that title. Nope. All right. Thank you, GQ. Space dolphins with chainsaws. I mean, personally, I would love for CIG to go for crabs. All right. I need a giant sentient crab race that's chasing the Vandal around. Because that would be funny. All right. We have hive mind crabs. We do. We do. All right. All right. This took place on August 15th, 2955. This is a script, auto-scripted, which starts at 1401 Standard Earth Time, SET, which is U.S. Eastern Standard Time, because the capital of the UEE is New York, out of the old UN building, which is no longer there anymore. It is now the UEE Senate building. It has been completely torn down and rebuilt. At least once, if not twice. But that's where it was started at. Speaker Marshall Madrigal. That means the U means he's Universalist, which is sort of the centrist party. It's the largest party in the UEE. He's from Berea, which is the main planet of the Magnus system. Fun fact: Berea is also where Drake Interplanetary is headquartered at. So the idea that the Speaker of the UEE Senate is from Berea is sort of funny to me. It's still very funny. Everyone, please be seated. We will now begin the discussion regarding the vote to extend Imperator Addison's executive order. The Second Life Initiative. Senator, I see you have your hand raised. Please proceed. Senator Ramona Frederico, C, Centralist, Mars, Sol System. So for those of you who are wondering, the Senate has a based off of planetary. Each planet, I believe, has one, maybe two representatives, and there is an exception to the rule. Earth has like 6 representatives, and Terra has multiple as well. I think it has 3, maybe 4. In theory, these representatives are based off of population, but Earth has a special exception because Earth is the cradle of humanity. And I believe all of the mega states of Earth have their own representation. So they are Americanio, Asiatica, Europa, I think just Africa. I think that's it. I can't remember the other ones, but yes. Plus there's at least 2 on Mars. Mr. Speaker, while it's important to acknowledge the desired impact of the Second Life Initiative, it has become apparent that the unfettered scientific research occurring has unequivocally caused more harm than good. In the wake of the recent Associated Science and Development whistleblower testimony, I think the time has come to not only end Addison's failed Second Life Initiative, but to place stricter limitations on research going forward. My proposal requires that all scientific institutions, including but not limited to corporations, independent research facilities, and universities that intend to explore research in relation to the Imperium spheres, directly or indirectly, must submit a detailed proposal of the scope and context of the research to the Imperial Science Foundation for approval before said research can be conducted. I am sure that ASD is not the only company to have exploited Addison's naivete, and unless we take a zero-tolerance approach to this misuse of government funds or dubious and morally questionable science, irreparable harm will continue to be done to the Empire. Mr. Speaker, I yield the remainder of my time. So, a couple of context things we have to understand about this. Number 1, this is also important for understanding Squadron, so just think of this as sort of a tangential addition to what we're talking about. First of all, she's from Mars. So Mars has a unique history associated with itself. The Mars tragedy was where humanity attempted to terraform Mars and was almost successful, but then had a catastrophic rebound, which killed everyone who was part of the Mars terraforming project. This was the first time we ever tried to terraform a planet. We're talking very early human history. That process basically forced a slower, more careful terraformation. And it's one of the reasons why AI has been banned in the Star Citizen universe, because at the core of the terraformation team was an experimental artificial intelligence. And now we're not talking about like LLMs. We're not talking about like ChatGPT. We're talking more along the lines of Cortana from Halo, a general intelligence AI. So, and they had these in the lore for at least a few years before that. Now it's also important to note that they've always screwed up and killed people. So, like, Mars has a sort of very hit or miss relationship with scientific advancements, because their history has basically said, hey, every time science advances, a lot of people get killed. So there's already that. And secondly, she's a centralist, which means that she is a part of the party that is very conservative, but also very xenophobic. Centralists are more in favor of decentralizing the UEE, but mostly under their terms, and especially if it helps out corporations. Centralists are huge proponents of Stanton, for instance. They think that Stanton is a great representation of what all of the UEE should become: corporate-owned entities controlling entire planets. They feel like corporations should get more looser restrictions and less taxes, and that more of the government-sponsored bureaucracy should be turned over to private interests. It's also important to note that centralists are effectively the descendants of the Mezzers. They're not Mezzers themselves, but these were the Mezzer loyalists who turned to the rebellion at the end of the Mezzer era. So these were people who were believed enough in the Mezzer regime to help them out, but thought that the Mezzers had gone insane. They still believe in the fundamental tenets of what the Mezzers stood for originally, which is especially anti-Xeno. And what Ibrahim spheres are at their core Xenotechnology. They're Vanduul tech. It's tech we stole from the Vanduul to create a immortality device that doesn't work as an immortality device. So keep that in mind. There is likely a lot of other context in her own speech where she's not really saying, well, this is awful. I mean, she probably is saying this is awful and the ASD research is immoral and reprehensible. But it doesn't come with pure intentions, because she is a centralist from Mars. Both of those things are definitely red flags that shows the reason why she'd be against it. I wouldn't be surprised if all centralists were against the Second Life Initiative, because they probably don't like the fact that humans are using xenotech in the first place. Speaker Marshall Madrigal, you Berea System, Magnus System. Thank you, Senator. The floor recognizes Senator Caldwell. So this is another Universalist from Persei in the Redder System. We'll go over the Persei and the Redder System in a moment, and then it'll kind of make sense. Mr. Speaker, Senator Federico, let me start by saying I share your concerns. We've all seen the experiments that came out of ASD's Pyro facilities, and the reports last week that a company used a Second Life grant to fund the development of a SimPod game were gravely disappointed. While we can all agree that there was an extreme misappropriation of government funding, increasing restrictions is not the answer. We have to acknowledge that these are edge cases. They do not represent the scientific community as a whole. Creating unnecessary bureaucratic red tape will only stymie the little progress that's already being made. This is not some hypothetical where we can afford to waste time. Until a solution to the regeneration is found, real people are dying. I feel that in some way, and some of my distinguished colleagues may need a bit of historical reminder. This is actually new lore here. That the difficult problems often require unconventional solutions. Need I remind you of how the crop rust epidemic of 2765 was cured? Granted, a little before my time, but an important lesson to be remembered. The government was very, very different back then, as the Mezers continued their rapid expansion across worlds. An erroneous and misguided terraforming incident caused the creation of the rust fungus, which managed to spread to Asura in the Farron system. Rust fungus is new, we haven't heard of this before, and it is implying that there is some planet out there, possibly a failed terraforming planet, that is covered in rust fungus, which is highly contagious. Managed to spread to Asura in the Farron system. It spread like wildfire, making the soil of the planet completely untenable. Mass famine, declining birth rates, and dramatic increase in crime ensued. But in tandem to this, Aegis Dynamics are developing a plasma reformer technology to increase quantum fuel efficiency. Nobody expected that a byproduct gas of this hydrocarbon fuel conversion could be turned into a fertilizer that would prove to be the solution to the crop rust epidemic, allowing them to revitalize the environment without re-terraforming it. My point is, we simply cannot anticipate where these breakthroughs will come from. I admire Imperator Addison's bravery in creating this initiative and trust that she is placing the scientific community to solve our very real and very urgent problem. Thank you. So a couple things to understand. Persei is one of the planets of the Redder system. Persei is if you gave DARPA a planet. For good or for ill, that's what you have. The University of Advanced Research, I can't remember the full name of it, but it's called UPark, which is not really a university as much as it's a location where grants go to be turned into technology. It's very classified, it's very secret, and everyone who's gone to UPark has been major movers and shakers. Technology that's been developed in UPark has fundamentally changed humanity and our technology. So UPark, Persei, and by extension UPark, which is a huge part of Persei, since the entire Redder system is dedicated to, like, half of all of their planets are dedicated to some sort of research or education, per their agreement with the original UNE for its founding. So Persei, the senator from Persei, has a big stake in not having the UEE clamp down on research grants. They are this is very much their personal stake, being like, we need to calm down, because if you just go crazy on blocking these grants, my people are going to get hurt. My people are going to lose business. So he's trying to be political, talking about the issue without bringing to the light that he's really talking about calm down and stop trying to steal the bag from my people. Senator Marshall Madrigal. U Berea Magna System. Thank you, Senator. Please go ahead, Senator Vox. Senator Carla Vox, T. Rytef Bremen System. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senator Caldwell, I must say, your level of hypocrisy is astounding. Now we're going to have to talk a little bit about the transitionalists. The transitionalists are the they're the leftist party of the UEE. They're much more xeno-friendly. They propose more rights given to Tavaran and other Xenos who live within the UEE. They're advocates for moving the capital away from Earth towards Terra, and extreme reorganization of the UEE into the Democratic Stellar Union, which was proposed at the end of the Mezer era, which failed to pass a final vote. Effectively, the transitionalists are rebels. They're rebels in a suit. They're revolutionaries with a tie. They're the remainder of the idealists who wanted to use the fall of the Mezers to create a kinder, gentler humanity. They want to increase government funding in terms of the sciences and arts, and they also want to improve the infrastructure of the UEE. However, they're also very naive. They are They believe that you can negotiate with a Vandal. They want a step down of military power in the UEE. And so there's a lot of like very good ideas that the UEE probably needs, combined with a lot of ideas which probably would hurt the UEE in the long term, similar to the Centralists. But you can see that they play off each other a lot. But because they're on the other end of the Universalists, they tend to both attack the Universalists a lot. So in this case, we have a Centralist saying this thing is wrong, and a Transitionalist saying this thing is wrong, coming at it from different angles. Speaker Marshall Magical says, Senator, you will address your colleague with, and then she cuts in, saying that your interest in maintaining this initiative is entirely withdrawn. I'm saying that your interest in this maintaining this is entirely self-serving. Beyond Caldwell, I believe this initiative is paramount to the survival of humanity, and without it, we have no hope of solving the regen crisis. Fox cuts back in, and this initiative in no way benefits or serves you personally. That your public support for ASD is purely in the interest of humanity's development. I have a source that has indicated that your support is not entirely unrelated and that you have been promising government funding for various projects, some related to the Second Life Initiative, others that do not, and more so that this is a company you hold shares in. Caldwell, I'd like to know the legitimacy of your source, but it's frankly irrelevant. Senator Vox, Senator Vox, this is your second warning. This chamber will not be home to whispers and rumors. Please return to the topic at hand and stick to the facts unless you are willing to enter direct evidence as corroboration. Of course, she ignores this and continues on. My point is, this initiative is giving rise to self-interested individuals and organizations that would exploit government funding for personal gain. We are being blinded by our desperation. I call not only for this initiative to be revoked and for previous safeguards to be reinstated, but for Imperator Addison to resign immediately. And people just start shouting in the chamber where Madrigal calls it to order. Senator Caldwell continues, Mr. Speaker, if I may, Senator Vox, let me ask you this. Are you aware of the extent of this crisis? That almost 1 in 20 people are able to regenerate, and you would have our Imperator resign? We need strong leadership, and we need to take risks. Vox comes back, but where is the regulation? Where is the accountability? Imperator Addison has enabled an environment where even the most reprehensible and morally bankrupt people can pursue and Caldwell steps in. What exactly is your solution, Senator? We continue to allow people to lose their loved ones, their partners, their families, their children, all in the favor of caution? Vox comes in. You are willfully misrepresenting what I am saying, Senator. I would like nothing more for this crisis to end. Scientific research must continue, but not under Imperator Addison's rule. What we are experiencing is the result of a gross incompetence at the highest level, encouraged by Senator Caldwell's personal greed, and Marshal Madrigal steps in. Enough. I am withdrawing your time, Senator. As you can see, the thing about the Transitionalists is they do this a lot. They tend to accuse all of their enemies of being corrupt sycophants who are there to only appease the elite, the shadow government that runs the UEE sort of thing. And their evidence? Vibes, usually. They're probably not wrong, but the likelihood that they themselves are also in the pockets of large investors in places like Terra is very high. Terra is a very financially viable and very powerful system in the UEE. It is where much of the trade of the UEE goes. It has a lot of advantages that Earth does not. So as a result, pretty much any senator coming from Terra is going to be freaking loaded. They're going to be very rich and also very educated and also very slick with their language, because to get to that point in the first place, they'd have to have stepped over many bodies. It could be, if the French pronunciation would be Vaux, right? Or Vos. Now is the time for Senator Armstrong. We'll talk about that towards the end. Oh yeah, and then we go into Toth. Toth is an independent from Hyperion in the Forest system. The best way of describing the Forest system is, what if the worst parts of like Arizona or Utah, I don't mean the places where everyone lives, I mean the places that no one lives in, that's just dust and sand. What if that was a planet? So it's not surprising that the Hyperion system, the planet of Hyperion, is an independent. Mr. Speaker, I believe that the conversation and the debates that are occurring in this room are reflective of what's the true heart of this issue: humanity's obsession with immortality. We see a decline in the regeneration as a crisis. We see the decline in regeneration as a crisis when we should be using it as a stark reminder of the inevitability and finality of the human race. We can't live forever. It's as simple as that. Would our time, effort, and funds not be better spent on increasing the quality of life for those who still live, or increasing the security presence in dangerous systems, or ensuring there isn't a single hungry mouth to feed in our most impoverished system? I propose that this initiative be immediately scrapped and the government's funds allocated to something more impactful and meaningful, something that matters to those to those still alive. Loud chatter, gavel bang. Quiet down. I suggest we take a 15-minute recess so people can calm down. Then we will continue the discussion properly before voting. Lawyer makes objectionable statement. Opposing a lawyer. Objection. First loyal. I withdraw my statement, Your Honor. So that gives you a little bit of insight into the current status of the UEE Senate. Now, this is 10 years before events of Squadron 42, but the Polo Initiative was happening right before the Battle of Vega, and it was this level of chaos. People accusing each other of being corrupt, people backstabbing each other for political gain, random crazies from smaller systems just piping in to say whatever the hell they want to so they can get on the news. We're talking like a political system that fundamentally doesn't work and hasn't worked for hundreds of years and has sort of drifted along rather than actually done anything meaningful to improve the lives of the people it lives under. Yeah, it's a good way of putting it. All the rich power movers arguing how to fix the immortality problem, and then the independent asking why is it the focus? All right, so let's go over the Odin system real quickly. I'm going to read the stuff we have from the Galactic Guide. All right. First discovered in 2532, evidence suggests that Odin was once home to a vibrant ecosystem potentially similar to Earth or Terra. That all changed when Odin's star entered the red giant phase. The star's expansion completely enveloped the system's first planet and quickly boiled off the biospheres of the others, killing all native life before the star collapsed into a white dwarf. When humanity's first explorers jumped to Odin, they found a system of icy rock worlds with uniformly foreboding exteriors. With no strong terraforming candidates, the system was dedicated to industrial development. Various mining outposts and refineries were established throughout Odin to take advantage of what resources could be found. However, as easily harvestable materials dwindled, Odin's economy has slowed to a crawl, and is too often the case when businesses left the system, criminal elements moved in to take their place. Today, the system is seen as an unsavory place on the decline. Odin most recently received a bit of positive press when it came to the cause for the center of celebration. Odin most recently received a bit of positive press when it became the cause of celebration of the scientific community after a group of noted archaeologists revealed that the government was allowing companies to wipe out an otherwise well-preserved fossil record that could tell the story of the life that came to evolve in the Odin system. While the grassroots Save the Fossils movement initially gained some traction in popular culture, interest soon faded. So, the first one we're going to talk about Odin 1, aka the Coil. This is a major plot point in Squadron 42. We've already seen multiple shots of it. It is a major location which we will be spending some time in during the events of Squadron 42. The Odin 1 cluster, commonly called the Coil, is possibly the most interesting area of the system. The Coil, thought to be the remnants of the system's pre-catastrophic first planet, is a seemingly unending cloud of planetary fragments, electromagnetic energy surges, and minerals. Odin 1's former moon, known as Gaini, still drifts near the remains of its former planet and has seen some minor settlement in its lightly atmosphered surface in the form of fracking operations and gas refinement plants. Inside the Coil itself, ore runs the gambit from basic slaw to heavy metals, with extremely valuable and distinctive caches being discovered more often than one would expect. Despite the cluster being the largest source of untapped resources in the system, it remains relatively untouched thanks to the dangers involved in any attempts to harvest them. The result of the exposed planetary core's iron-rich content coming into contact with cast-off stellar remnants, arc charges are deadly to any ship unlucky enough to be caught in their embrace. To avoid these energy storms, most mining operations limit themselves to relatively safe pockets that temporarily appear within the shifting clouds. The Shubin Interstellar operates a station in the cluster. Most mining operations have remained smaller scale. Archon Station is what it's called. You pull up Archon Station so you take a look at it. So to give you context, that is an Idris. And this is Archon Base. Now, while it's not fully confirmed, Archon Base is a level in Squadron 42. And how CIG tends to build their base. We've actually seen elements of it here and there. How CIG tends to build levels, not intends, but tends to build levels for Squadron, is they build this massive open area for a play space to allow for players to approach a problem in many different ways. So it's not just one linear solution. There is a solution, but it's with multiple branching paths of how you get to that solution. Now, the solution is always going to end up the same way, but it's mostly focused on player choice and agency in solving the problem rather than having it just be a railroad experience. That's like the average size. Yeah, this is about the same size as a typical space station in the Stanton system, but like, again, we're talking about a mining operation being run at it. Fracking operations for petrochemicals generally requires there to have been seas and simple carbon-based life at some point. Yes, the entire system was home to seas and life for a brief moment in time. We know that for sure because we have fossils of sea creatures. Smaller than it looks, it says so improperly. Yeah. Now, it's also important to note that most of the space is probably not playable space in terms of like this boom arm. It's probably more located in the central area. But a lot of this area is built out for you to interact with from what we've seen. And it's not clear if it's just combat missions, if it could also be social missions or some investigation stuff. All right, let's continue reading. Of course, if the arc charges don't get you, the outlaws may. The labyrinthine tunnels of the Coil have long served as a popular hiding spot for well-armed pirates. Recent reports indicate a new group has moved in and has been involved in dozens of hit-and-run strikes against legitimate operations. This is in reference to the OMC. Isn't this one of the? Isn't this that the one that's an asteroid that's cracked in half? Yes. Any atmosphere around there to slow down traffic? In terms of the space station? No. Like atmospheric bursts or something like that, but not really any atmosphere. Gainey has an atmosphere though. Yes. Odin 2. Odin 2 is believed to have been within the star's former green band and may have been ideal for human habitation before the star's collapse. Today, the planet is too cold and has only what little atmosphere it naturally gathered in the last 50,000 years. Scientists and companies looking for isolated testing facilities have established outposts on the world, but no true population lives there permanently. It's basically a research planet. The planet's moon V is a different matter. Rayleigh Station is a snowy base of operations erected by a now defunct weapons testing company. Allows civilian contractors to bring in supplies and ferry out hazard materials from facilities on Odin 2 below. Rayleigh Station is not the most welcoming place in the galaxy, but there is enough there to keep travelers busy. Now, Rayleigh Station may have been turned to Fortune's Cross, I think. But Rayleigh Station may still exist. Odin 3 and Odin 4. The second planet is still intact in the second planet is still intact in the Odin system. Odin 3, the system's residents are notoriously insistent that the coil still to be considered the first planet, is another dead world. A few researchers have taken special note of the planet since it's believed that the surface may hold more secrets of Odin's past inhabitants than the sparse fossils that have been left discovered so far. Odin 4 is a gas giant home to a hydrogen rendering station in geosynchronous orbit. Although there is minimal crew to handle operations, the facilities for interacting with outsiders are fully automated. A supplier drops off unrefined hydrogen and takes on full tanks without ever encountering any of the occupants. Starship crews are actively discouraged from layover on Odin 4, but the station has a limited number of poorly maintained rental habs. And there's a couple of quotes from the system. This is from Victor Zahid, CEO of Chemline Solutions, shareholders report 2919 5/4. So we're talking May 4th, 2919. As this quarter, due to a recent decline in output and revenue, our Gainey extraction facilities are being permanently shuttered. This marks the continuation in our efforts to focus on the synthesization and the paring down of ongoing Odin operations. This is from Dr. Odessa Reynolds, University of Rudder lecture, Preserving Odin's Fossil Record, from October 4th, 2943. The system was destroyed once already. Let's not let the history of Odin be destroyed again under the stewardship of humanity. I can't find the video where they did the vertical slice and fly through of Odin 1. I have it ingrained in my brain, but I can't find it. Yes, it is the 2017 vertical slice with director's commentary. Does the link not work? I didn't see a link being posted. It's a good one to look at because the director's commentary is Chris Roberts, Sean Tracy, and I think Aaron Roberts. It may have been Todd Pappy, who's no longer with CIG. But their discussion on how squadrons levels are designed is very illuminating. So they talk extensively about their design philosophy when it comes to Squadron. The stuff that I spoiled myself with was only Chapter 1 stuff. I don't really know much about Chapter 2 and 3, except for the fact that the plan is that you progress in ships, similar to Wing Commander, where you get transferred to ships based off of how well you do I think there was a Wing Commander. But the idea was you start on a smaller ship and you work your way up to eventually flying out of a Bengal, flying in Hornets. So, yeah. I know this is an unrelated question, but why do Pyro have regeneration facility? Regen is open source. So anybody who has, it's basically free to download the blueprints of how to make an Ibrahim sphere. So long as you have regen serum, which you can either buy or steal, you can build a Ibrahim sphere capable regeneration bed, because you can get med beds pretty easily. So you can grab the med beds and you can build yourself an Ibrahim sphere. You can do regen. But that director's commentary gives you a lot of information in terms of the design philosophy and the approach that CIG is taking when it comes to Squadron 42's development. So if you're interested in that stuff, definitely check out that 2017 director's commentary. So you think they should make regen goo more expensive in a location like Pyro? If they had a dynamic economy, yeah, for sure. But not in the current economy with the way that they do things, especially with bugs and such. Those of you who don't know, I also stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/TheAstroPub. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. And I do stream on do gameplay and commentary on like just gameplay stuff on another channel, youtube.com/TheAstroPub Live, where you can check out. I do monthly report read-throughs of Star Citizen. I talk more about the technical parts and day-to-day news and updates there. I also have a podcast that covers a lot of Star Citizen updates. It's been going on for 9 years now, called The Captain's Table. So if you want to hear me talk more about the stuff that everyone wants to talk about with Star Citizen, not so much the lore, feel free to go there. But I try to focus more on the lore here, just because to keep this really specific on that. Not really leaks, but there's some info on chapter 2 and 3 available. I've also done some research into Act 1. And I will say I'm a little worried about the people thinking it's too little, but I have faith. It's important to remember that CIG has weird naming conditions. So chapter 1 of Squadron is the title of the first game. And then inside the game, they have different chapters, up to 28 chapters. So when you're saying chapter 1, we're talking about the first game, Act 1. Chapter 1 of Squadron 42 is also the first mission after the prologue of, so no, but it can get confusing because Chris is bad at naming things. I feel like he should just call it parts. Because that's already a cinematic knowledge because he wants to kind of compare it to movies. So part 1, part 2, part 3, you know. Still kind of nuts to understand that all of Squadron 42 will be getting is one act out of so many. It's 18 to 20 hours. Can go up to 40 hours depending on how much time you put into and the difficulty level you play. Or act. Yeah, I think the acts would work. Though I think they're probably going to end up doing side stories and probably extending the story after part 3 if it does really well. So. But yeah, the important part to understand about Squadron 42 is that the Odin system is basically where you are. So almost the entire story of Squadron 42 takes place in one place. One system. There are some other parts you go to, we know you start off in Vega, but the majority of the actual gameplay where you're actually flying your ship around and making decisions and uncovering secrets and unraveling conspiracies and hanging out with your best friends and doing cool things, all that is in Odin. I heard that the character will be able to be ported into from Squadron 42. That is an old understanding because that was back when Squadron 42 was going to be released as one game. Your character, the character creator in Star Citizen is the character creator of Squadron. So you can save your character in Squadron and then import that same character into Star Citizen if you wanted to. But yeah, the replay value is, CIG's hope for replay value is there are multiple directions you could go to beat the game. There's not a single way to beat the game. So there's many different avenues you can take. And their AI system is very unique in that their way that they're developing their AI is to be dynamic. So while you play through the game, AI spawns and locations will not be the same place every time, at least in their hope. So the game will shuffle up the AI locations and their movements and change up their behaviors. So depending on how you approach things, they may completely be different each time you play it. You may do a stealth run of the entire game, for the entire missions, and each time you play it, you'll get a different random variable set of who you're going to be facing. Now, that was gleaned from Squadron 42 monthly reports and their own discussions on how they build things. But yeah. Is there confirmed there will be sequels to Squadron? Yes, because originally the Kickstarter had early backers of Star Citizen back when Squadron 42 and Star Citizen were the same game. But Squadron 42 was the single player version. If you backed early enough, you got access to the a DLC for Squadron called Behind Enemy Lines, where they were going to just take basically anything that made it to the cutting room floor and again it didn't make it to the cutting room floor and build another sort of add-on pack like they did with Wing Commander and Wing Commander 2. And when they decided to split it up, the people who got those Behind Enemy Lines pack, they ended up getting access to Act 2, to the second game. They basically said this will be a second game. As long as there's a community-agreed canonical route, or near as canonical with the lore, it makes no difference. I will say this, yeah, episodes is another way of putting it, but episodes people tend to feel like if you do say episodes, that it's like the older technique where they would release an episode, each level would be its own episode, so. It's not a sandbox game. I'll tell you that. I've talked with a number of developers who work on Squadron. It is not a sandbox. It is a linear experience in that you go from point A to point B. And when you arrive at point B, the same story is going to play out. Now, as far as I know, there are some variables towards the end, depending on your decisions, but the end of the game is always going to be the same no matter what you do. So the people with the Squadron 42 digital downloads in their early packs will only get episode 1? Yes. You'll have to purchase episode 2 and episode 3. Now, episode 2 and episode 3, or part 1, part 2, part 3, or chapter 2, chapter 3, those ones are likely not going to be available for several years. So I really wish they had a solo sandbox game like the Elder Scrolls series, but in the Star Citizen world. I wouldn't be surprised if CIG ends up making a single-player spin-off similar to what Chris did with Wing Commander Privateer, with the Wing Commander universe. We could have something like Star Citizen Privateer or Squadron 42 Privateer as a standalone single-player narrative experience in a sandbox, but I think that's a matter of reusing assets effectively once Squadron is done. I think Star Citizen is Privateer, yeah, but it's multiplayer. Yeah, let them release the game first, then we can talk about sequels. It's a good way of putting it. All right, let's continue on to talk a little bit about Odin. Again, feel free to ask questions about lore. Let's look at the actual huge freaking... Think about how long it's taken to make the first bit of Squad 42 and how there will be more bits to add. Who's going to be around to reprise roles? They can't have recorded everything and more. It's important to note that this is supposed to be chapter 1. So we don't know how many people are going to return for the story after the end of Squadron 42 Part 1. So we may see little to nobody from the first game and the second game. Because you're not the Master Chief. You're not, Commander Shepard. You're just some guy or some gal who happens to be in the right place at the wrong time. The Shriven mining facility in Odin. What's known of the facility and the relevant history? We don't know how long it's been there. From the implications, it's been there at least some time. But Shriven is the only major company that still operates in Odin. Most of other companies have pulled out. You don't know that. Someone could be playing as Master Chief Shepard. They could. But you're not the fucking hero of the verse. You are just... You don't have super speed. You're just somebody. Characters did die in Wing Commander 1. Yes, they did. But it wasn't always canonical. All right, the Odin system. The Odin system is a planetary system of the United Empire of Earth, UEE. It is made up of 2 Chthonian planets, 1 gas giant, and an unusual cosmic anomaly, and a white dwarf star. So Chthonian planets are former gas giants which get boiled away as they as like a star expands. So like a Chthonian is basically these two planets, Odin 3 and 4, or Odin 2 and 3, were once not terrestrial. And then they became terrestrial when the star went into its red giant phase. And then that phase created the habitation for life on those planets, the moons, to exist. And then when the star collapsed back down to a white dwarf, they froze. Those planets froze. The anomaly was created when the first planet in the system was destroyed by the star, leaving behind a unique asteroid field beset by constant electrical storms. Corporations and research facilities that deal in dangerous materials conduct testing on Odin 2. You're not Neo, the Vault Dweller, Dova King, Luke. You're not Paul either. No, I'm Paul. I'm not even Paul. Odin 2. Theorized to have existed within the system's green zone back when the star was alive, the uninhabitable surface has only a few research facilities. Odin 2's moon, Vili, houses several transfer hubs and make an adequate stop for haulers transporting hazardous materials from the planet. So it's still the same as what we've seen before. This is the new one. Asiato Station. So the Asiato Relay Corporation is the one that runs pretty much all of the comm relays in the UEE. They have done so for a long time. Surrounded by a vast network of comm relays, this Asiato station acts as the primary nexus to manage Odin's communications network and keep the system's inhabitants connected. Odin 3. Though easily overlooked, Odin 3 offers insight into the history of the system. making it home to several ongoing scientific endeavors. That's where this is, right? Which looks like an asteroid base of some kind. The Kessel Belt, obviously. Odin 4. No one sets foot on this gas giant, but its volatile yet beautiful atmosphere makes it well worth a flyby. Travelers can refuel at one of the many facilities orbiting the planet while taking in the breathtaking beauty of Odin 4's hypnotizing auras. And now we have Fortune's Cross, which is right next to the Kessel Highway. Although its glory days are past, Fortune Cross remains a lifeline for adventure-worn travelers and their ships. Straight off the Kessel Highway, the station has been battered by years of economic decline. It still serves as a commercial staple for the system and popular transport hub for workers entering and leaving Odin. So we see here, it's registered on here that the Kessel Highway is here. We don't know what that means. We also have these weird shapes. So it could mean that these shapes are some sort of transit system, similar to like a jump point. But we don't fully know. But we do know that it's called the Kessel Highway, and it's specifically registered as this sort of thing. So it could also just be a breach in the asteroid belt, so it's easier to kind of travel back and forth. Then we have jump points: Kellogg, Nyx, and Tanga. Despite its checkered reputation, Odin acts as an oasis of the UEE in this corner of the universe. Directly connected to the Kellogg system, which enjoys UEE protection under the Fair Chance Act, and two unclaimed systems of Nyx and Tanga. Nyx being one we've talked about extensively. Odin 1A. There's the coil. Also known as Gainey, this former moon has the rare distinction of orbiting Odin's sun and not the planet, though it still drifts near the ruins of its late parent Odin 1. Gainey once played home to many fracking and gas refinement plants until tectonic instability forced their relocation. So this is one of the fracking facilities. We've actually seen clips of this in Squadron 42's trailer. We've also seen this before in Squadron 42's, one of the Squadron 42's trailers. This is a terraforming planet, a terraforming station. So this terraformer over Odin 1A indicates that Odin 1A was terraformed. And then we have the coil. If you're looking for Odin 1, you'll be looking a long time. All that remains of the system's first planet is a cosmic phenomena known as the coil, created when the the system star collapsed. Gonna see the swirling mass inside of it. And that's what we have from the latest Squadron 42 release. Imagine we can all get Halo retreatment. We give our all in Squadron 42 for the sake of the UEE. I didn't learn until like 3 weeks ago that data can't warp. I mean, it makes total sense, but it made me excited for data running. Go to there. So Asiato is Comstar of the UEE? Yes, but before Comstar became the Space Pope. We did see Fortune's Cross in a trailer. In fact, if we look here, so this right here, which is the thumbnail, by the way, that is one of the barges that we saw in the trailer. These two, those are whole seas. Those of you who play Star Citizen, that's a whole sea. Compared it to the system, the whole like out a couple of things. We're gonna watch a couple of the quick videos and then we'll probably end it. I'm not gonna watch the entirety of the Squadron 42 preview trailer. So, but I'm gonna pull up the Squadron 42. I'm not going to watch the whole preview. 2 hours later, mistakes were made. Okay. Okay. I'm going to pull up the I Held the Line so we can watch that. Actually, no, I'm going to pull up. This one. All right, so we're going to go to the very end. We hit the actual trailer section.
I do solemnly pledge, mind and body, I will defend the Empire with my life.
Your application to the Flight Academy has been reconsidered. Captain McLaren had submitted a letter of recommendation on your behalf before the battle.
Hey, it's fine. It's fine. You're safe.
We may be a small crew, but the work we do matters.
Welcome to the Stanton. I'm Eugene Morrow.
I'm Petty Officer Webster, Chief Mechanic.
This will be your new home.
We got you flying with Lieutenant Commander Colton. He's one of our best.
Sir?
Who the hell are you?
I'm your new wingman, sir. The name's...
You want me to learn your name and live long enough for me to care?
Baron Actual, you're clear to launch.
Launching in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Odin system. This is gamey. That was a Santoki. It's Crunchyroll, right? Yeah, it's Crunchyroll, not Santoki. Go through here. Let's get to the point. So, a lot of what you saw there was sort of instances of what we saw. Most of it was gamey. We saw the coil. We saw Fortune's Cross. So a lot of that takes place in that system. There's also 30 seconds of a funeral surface. Yes. So a lot of the early stages of the game is not in Odin, because it's sort of like a tutorial, but it's sort of a cinematic tutorial. The best way of describing Squadron in terms of his gameplay is if you look at Chris's older games, he liked to call them interactive movies. These ones are probably a little bit more oriented towards gameplay than movies, considering they've said things like being able to cancel out of cutscenes and stuff like that is a plan they wanted to do, where you can watch a cutscene or you can cancel it out and watch it in real time, go up there. There's definitely some influence of like Half-Life in there. But the main focus is still going to be on a narrative story. So do you all like Kojima games? Because Kojima is sort of what Chris Roberts was before Kojima arrived. Kojima became the Chris Roberts sort of in the experience of gaming. All right. We're actually going to get to the part where they talk about, I'm going to keep this closed captions up so you can do it as well.
As Chris says, we've moved into the polish phase of Squadron 42, which means extra emphasis on ensuring things feel fun. This means focusing on the small and large elements of the game, such as dialing in combat encounters, but also looking at the feel of how you control your character or vehicle and making sure it's immersive as possible. We've paid extra attention to how your character reacts when in their ship, so that you feel like an actual pilot, whether that's firing your weapons, taking hits, or punching the afterburners to get to cover. Ship AI has also seen huge improvements, with closer engagement distances and more varied behaviors. And with our new precision targeting mode, the action has never been as close. With the aim now on polish, we've organized the project into self-sufficient strike teams.
This is Gainy, Odin 1A. So this is the moon of Gainy.
So we can focus on individual areas to deliver the best experience.
You can see up there, those are the terraformers.
Get out of sight. The cutlass is going to spot you.
This allows us to bring all disciplines together with a unified vision of enhancing the gameplay by seamlessly blending it with polished visuals, final cinematic performances, and our ever-improving technology.
You didn't see the boat, kid. You're good to keep going.
Yeah, Chris Roberts mentions Dark Souls as well as an inspiration. Yeah, Squadron comes out of him playing Demon Souls and him wanting to have that experience, but in a space game.
We're also dialing in gameplay features, such as the ship flight model for both atmosphere and space, which covers massive...
This is Gainy still, you can kind of see that. I am kind of worried though, because my least favorite missions in Ace Combat were the trench run missions where you had to go through the canyons and not get seen, and yeah, sounds like what this is.
The modes, control surfaces, and our gold standard HUD and MFDs. Our interaction system for both the world and your character have also seen additional improvements, allowing us to hone and craft environmental puzzles unique to each location, while allowing us to tell the story of the world around you. The military multi-tool is an essential piece of equipment for every pilot that integrates all attachments into a single handheld device, and allows us to create really interesting challenges, including physics-based puzzles.
This is likely either in the coil or in inside Gainey, possibly, or it could also be Odin 4, Odin 3, probably Odin 3.
Using our updated rope tech.
Unidentified vessels, this is the UEE Navy. Power down your ships and stand by for processing.
Yeah, you can f*** off. The coil's ass.
God damn it.
Our scanning, targeting, and marker system has also seen an overhaul, allowing us to highlight only the essential information that you need, such as key objectives, mission targets, and high-level scan information, while keeping your overall view as clean as possible.
Damn skank! Take him off me! No!
Tactical FPS combat and stealth, which has seen a suite of improvements, from improved looting, weapon feel and balance, realistic scopes, and smoother locomotion, alongside our new and improved FPS radar and scanner that provides you an overview of the battlefield, but at the cost of ramping up your own emissions. We've also seen the introduction of our Maelstrom-powered destructible environment, which adds a layer of dynamism to the experience, alongside our improved AI, that can now have hundreds of combinations of traits that allow us to create unique and challenging combat encounters that really push your tactical awareness and skill.
This is probably Gainey as well. What is Gainey? It's the first moon of Odin 1, which is now the coil. It still drifts near the coil. We talked about it a little earlier. Gainey is the moon of Odin, and it is terraformed.
We play and review the builds regularly and call out action points in each level from start to finish on where we need to improve the gameplay. This is an incredibly rewarding stage of development for me and the team, as the ultimate vision of the game is realized, allowing us to craft an experience that we can be really proud of. One specific area that I'm excited to dial in is the feeling of the player interacting with the world around them.
Patching you in.
As it's a core component of Squadron and really grounds the world that you inhabit. We've made sure that any interaction in the environment is physically represented by a character animation to keep you in the moment and fully immerse you in the experience that we've created. Ultimately, this is the final phase of gameplay iteration before we fully transition into optimization and stability on the road to release.
Agent Trejo, this is Colton. Come back. Always trips me out to see terraforming setups like this. Web tried explaining how atmosphere processors work. Really shows how far we've come. The hell is she?
Yeah, this is likely Gainey. Is where that is. Those are the atmospheric processors. We saw them in the image that we saw earlier. So, but yeah.
With the transition of Squadron to polish phase,
don't they say they're in the polish stage now? They are.
We've had the opportunity to find additional moments within the existing narrative to add subtle interactions where appropriate. It's been tremendously exciting to play through these areas and find places to augment the mood, support gameplay, and further embellish our story and characters.
So yeah, man,
I can't believe it. They said I've got to wait another 2 years before I can reapply. So that's why I figured I'd get a job trying in security, because that's, you know, I can get some hours flying in the cockpit and whatnot. Can't hurt, right? Exactly.
We've also been capturing pickups for our lead female player character, as well as wildlines for our various enemies that you all will encounter throughout the game on both foot and in your cockpit. These consist of a range of responses and reactions that you as the player can trigger, which has been the culmination of efforts by the gameplay and AI teams. This means that you're going to have to tangle with some very smart and reactive bad guys to complete your mission.
Now, these are likely not OMC, but shipjackers.
At the heart of this immersive adventure, you'll find cutting-edge cinematic storytelling, thoughtfully crafted to fully immerse you into your story.
We fight today! So in 40 years from now, when you're surrounded by everything and everyone you hold dear, and they ask, what did you do in the Battle of Vega? You can look them in the eye and say, I held the line. Men and women of the Second Fleet, I am proud to stand with you today. Good luck. Bishop out.
Nice speech.
Any word from the recon team?
Not yet.
Well, let's get into position.
Throughout the polish phase, our team is taking every opportunity to push things.
John Rice Davies. He is the head of security for Archon Station. So when you go meet him, he's also a friend of Colton. So he used to fly with Colton at some point. And this is only the one and only reference of a Pegasus class carrier, the UES Chimera. And then we have the hair triggers.
To the next level.
Tell me you're expecting company. This is not
118th Squadron.
Good.
The Cine team is focused
and the 153rd Attack Squadron
on finalizing edit lock on all of our big action as well as all smaller character sequences.
I could have pulled this off of the Galactopedia.
Yeah, probably, but I think their solar mass calculations are wrong, though.
That is Agent Trejo. Agent Trejo is both your best friend and your worst enemy. She is a special agent in charge of the Odin system, which means this is her territory. You come in firing all half-cocked with a giant Idris in the system that's not used to you, attracting a lot of attention while she's been doing years of research and infiltration and trying to get to know the different gangs and deal with all of them individually. So she kind of doesn't like you being there.
Well, this is ridiculous.
How so?
We are now able to adjust our shot composition to final cameras thanks to recently crafted space vistas and level art being content complete now.
It'd be nice to know how much of a shitstorm we're flying into.
More like a hellstorm, Blue. One you ain't gonna fly out of.
Shut up. Now, I hadn't seen another ship that wasn't trying to kill me in
Cal Mason, love him.
days, let alone a hauler, let alone a Jean. So you can imagine my surprise.
Detailed lighting passes can be done on hero sequences so we can show our cast and convey their emotions in the best light possible. And we're making sure our cinematics are triggering as fluid as we can craft them so they form a coherent concerto with the rest of the player's narrative experience.
Mr. Wexler, this is Lieutenant Commander Colton.
Oh, Commander, hey, Julian Wexler. I'm the field manager of this little operation. Welcome aboard the Archon. What brings the Navy to this little corner of the universe?
I forgot who that actor is, but he's a pretty famous actor too. I think he was in Rogue One. Krennic in Rogue One. And of course, Liam Cunningham, aka Onion Knight, and Rona Mitra from The Last Ship.
We got you flying with Lieutenant Commander
Ben Mendelsohn. All right. Oh, he's also in Fallout. Yeah. Is he in Fallout? Nice.
Colton. He's one of our best.
As others will share, this is the most rewarding chapter of development, which allows us to truly experience the visceral and oftentimes emotional moments that our narrative provides.
That is Sophie Wu from Kick-Ass. To give you context. The guy in the chair is the guy who was going blue.
How did you handle it after Vega?
I'm not sure I handled anything. It helps to remember that stuff like this is supposed to hurt.
I've never been good at dealing with problems I can't fix.
Well, this is one that you don't have to do alone.
That's good to know.
She is the head mechanic on board the Stanton.
For the animation teams, polish phase means refining the social aspects of Squadron 42 that occur between the various missions and getting the behaviors implemented across all of its chapters.
Oh yeah, it's heavily implied through some of the cinematics we've already seen that the player character has PTSD. So.
Here we're dialing in the hangar to make it as immersive and believable an experience as possible.
Or at least some sort of combat-related trauma.
Hey, all right. Pardon me. Let's do this. I have to switch out some of the interchange from the hangar deck. We've been getting a weird airflow.
Is Stanton named after the ship, or is the ship named after the system? The ship is named after the system, which is itself named after the brother of the discoverer of the Stanton system, which is the what is the freaking belt called? I always forget. Aaron, yeah, Toshi Aaron. Her brother was named Stanton Aaron.
Anyway. For example, we're launching off a space carrier, but we still ground the feel in real-world actions, refueling, repairing, and inspecting, and making sure that your next flight mission is a success. This means we're looking out for pops, hiccups, or awkward transitions, and ensuring that everything flows and looks like all the great mocap performances we've captured.
Let's ready some extra ice packs out of storage. Whenever gunners are on full rotation, you can always count on at least one of them getting hurt.
We also have you covered in everyday life. The medical staff work diligently for their patients, whether they're players or crew. We really want you to feel part of an authentic crew, an important part of the UEE Navy in an enormous universe of people going about their everyday lives.
Let's go ahead and clear for takeoff. Ground crew, prep bay for takeoff. Copy that. Hangar, ready for launch. Takeoff approved, Baron 2. You have the ball.
See the fun fact, they took the cues from actual carrier flight deck operators, learned how the carrier flight deck operators hand signals, and then had them recreate them so they can make them.
Ready and hold on as you're launched off the deck of the carrier.
Baron 2, you are cleared for launch. Have a safe flight, Baron 2.
wants you to not only decide how you play the game, but to feel as if the people you interact with are in that world with you.
I would have never thought of
Comparing CR to Kojima is like comparing a random unknown college basketball player to Michael Jordan. CR is a college player that nobody knows. That's really funny. That's really funny. If you had said that 20 years ago, you would have been laughed at. Everyone knew Chris Roberts because he made the first blockbuster video game. Kojima wouldn't exist without Chris Roberts. Before there were auteurs in video games, Chris Roberts was the first one. He disappeared from video games after he tried to make his play in Hollywood. But to claim that he is a nobody and some just random schmuck off the street just shows you have no idea what you're talking about.
Shotgun could be so pretty. Damn, this R97 is sleek as hell.
By the way, Tavarin made.
Like a lot of other weapons in Gemini's arsenal, it has a higher rate of fire than most guns of its type.
Gotta love the fact this isn't. Also, Flash, dude, Flash. What the fuck? Both the player and the gunny are just flashing the shit out of each other.
We're working to support a feel of authenticity through world traversals, running, jumping, and climbing, interactions with objects and the environment,
Lagging, thank you.
solid weapon gameplay and enemy reactions, as well as combat realities, such as weapon malfunctions. Or in close encounters of the more lethal kind. Ooh, that's gonna hurt in the morning. As we continue to focus on the quality experience, we've been working closely with our art teams, and it's been exciting to see.
Yeah, it's not intended for me to be you to hear me really. I'll pause it if I need to.
Their environments come to life alongside us.
While animation and design have been populating the locations, polish phase for my teams means making huge advancements in the quality of our characters and environments. We've established our standard with recognizable characters like Mark Hamill, Gillian Anderson, and Gary Oldman, and we're now applying this to the rest of the cast and identifying any remaining tech requirements that need to be closed down. The story of Squadron 42 takes you through a variety of diverse locations of varying scales and styles. We shared glimpses of several environments before, and there's still plenty out there for you to discover. One of the main challenges the art team has had to face during the development of Squadron 42 is ensuring the visuals are complementary to the narrative of the script. The mood and feeling of a space is just as important to us as it is making sure we hit the visual quality that CIG has become known for.
No good, we can't hack it from this side. Graves, we got a locked door. Can you give us access?
No, I'm afraid that's a negative, Steve. I would have to add you to our system to give you override permissions, and there's a lot involved in that. It won't happen quickly.
Okay, we'll figure something out.
Everything you see during the campaign has been heavily inspired.
That's a Xi'an ship.
By the classics of 70s and 80s sci-fi, but with a modern twist. We want everything you see to feel like it has a soul, its own personality, and tells of a history long before you arrived. Crafting interesting flight spaces and their connecting tissue has been one of the more unique challenges we've needed to overcome for Squadron. Developing our VDB tech to blend seamlessly between tighter traversal spaces and into wider space vistas and
Been gaming since 1980. Sci-fi was a niche in the 80s and 90s. And I remember for this fact, these games were just like sci-fi games back then. Nobody knows who Chris CR is. I think you're overestimating Kojima's reach as well, saying he's some sort of well-known auteur all over the world. He's known in gaming, for sure. But again, Kojima wouldn't exist without someone like Chris Roberts. He was quite well regarded as well as quite reviled inside the gaming space because he created the blockbuster game, and EA specifically was only looking for Wing Commander-esque games that could make them a ton of money. To a degree, Chris Roberts is responsible for a lot of the bloated AAA titles we see today because he started the trend of like creating these big blockbuster games. They were even called blockbuster games at the time. You should remember this, Troy, if you've been around that long. You're letting your own bias slip in there a little bit, buddy.
Planet has proved incredibly difficult but rewarding, ensuring that Squadron...
What big circle was you running in? This probably a Xi'an ship.
flows seamlessly from one chapter to the next, without interruption. Creating a diverse array of locations is essential to us. Our environments need to work from a variety of scales. We need to pay close attention to detail, whether we're working in a dirty engineering vent or navigating...
Wasn't Star Citizen originally funded from Chris? Yeah, basically it was CR's name that got it. He did Wing Commander and it didn't do well, and so he did production for a bunch of other sort of lower like level movies. He helped produce Lucky Number 11. His biggest one was probably Lord of War that he produced.
In the debris of a dying star, wondering...
That was a ship? Yes.
What may be around that next corner, or even who may live there? How would they have survived, and what state of mind may they be in?
Yes, I've been speaking with engineering. They think it might be a problem. Yeah, I'll make sure.
Yeah, he didn't write or direct it, he just produced it, which is still saying something. He also, more importantly, was a major producer, a major lead in the, what was it called? It was the Beowulf movie where you had, Beowulf was a space bounty hunter hunting down and Grendel was like a space creature. A Pathfinder, something like that. Outlander, yeah. He was heavily into Outlander. That's how Chris and the writer Dave Haddock met, because Dave Haddock was working on Outlander as sort of like an aide, grip kind of guy. He was there and knew Chris as that part of that. So yeah, and that's where, for instance, Jack Houston, who plays Cal Mason, he was an Outlander as well. That's why he knows Chris. So like, yeah. Wing Commander movie was bad. I still have to watch it, and then when I catch it. Wing Commander movie, I always believe, was a good, solid B movie. It wasn't a really great movie, but it was a good, solid B movie. Let's continue on with this, though.
We've worked closely with our social teams in delivering a cohesive social experience when you're taking some downtime from our...
Wasn't his movie. His only movie he directed, Wing Commander, was kind of ass. Now, there is actually a lot of recorded information about it. It was a case of studio interference. Like, Chris had a movie, he had a script, he had everything written up, and then into pre-production, they basically halved his budget. So he had to work with a shoestring budget compared to what he was given. It was promised, and so they had to cut a lot of stuff. So, and I will say the parts that don't involve the main characters are great, but the main characters are ass. Yeah, CR did work on the Ultima games and helped develop tech for 3D for the Ultima Underground games. Yes.
Our refined flight and FPS missions, or even missions of the more eerie kind. We'll be introducing new space stations on a massive scale.
So this is Fortune's Cross, and I believe the fact that it's kind of got these little openings may be the indication of what the Kessel Highway is. It must be some sort of enclosed or protected space with sorts of region.
Brought together and designed to be as tangible as possible. We've thought about their function, their age, and try to ensure there's a progression in artistic style with each station as you progress through the game.
This is the inside of Fortune's Cross.
As you can see today, the teams are working incredibly hard, ramping up the detail and quality to match the breadth of our vision for Squadron 42.
We have no idea what this is. A lot of people are assuming it is some sort of consolidated Outland vehicle. I have a counter argument because of the lore that we know of. I have a feeling that this is possibly the Crusader Jupiter. Because these things are massive. They dwarf whole seas. These things are like a third of, they're bigger than even like capital ships. And they're just giant barges.
Now, I know you're all asking, when can I play it?
When can I play it?
When we have the locked release date, you will be the first to know. Now, we're in polishing phase on Squadron 42. You will start to see a lot more things coming to Star Citizen, as well as overall progress on the persistent universe. The polish phase can take some time. We have come this far, and we want to make sure Squadron 42 delivers on the promise of being this generation's wing commander. Now, even though there's only a few of us in this video, I'd like to extend a big thank you to all our staff around the globe who have been putting their heart and soul into bringing Squadron 42 to life. And I would like to thank everyone in the community for your patience and your support. To paraphrase Admiral Bishop, when people ask, what did you do in the development of Squadron 42? You can look them in the eye and say, I held the line. I'm proud to stand with you. Thank you for making this game with us.
So, I wanted to go over that a little bit so you can get some context there. Then we're going to come and wrap this up now in terms of like discussions. Feel free to ask any lore questions going forward. I wanted to watch that again to give you kind of some context on some of those elements of Odin, as well as the people who are in Odin and like the major movers and shakers of it. Two years of polishing phase, and that last year's presentation, you can see the results of it. One of the pilots in Squadron 42 had the Polish surname of Karaszewicz. Yeah. Yes, go ahead and ask your Perseus question again. I don't think I caught it. I think it was Consolidated Outland because it's the same design as the Pioneer. It could be, but it's important to also remember that the Pioneer is still in development, and if they were using kits they developed from Squadron, we would have seen it. They would have mentioned something like that. Didn't the UE start reproduction of the Perseus? If so, why didn't we see any of them? I assume they weren't in the game for the time for these trailers. No, the Perseus wasn't brought back into active production until very recently. It wasn't until the battle of Oberon with the last stand of the Achilles that it was even brought to the attention of the UEE that the Perseus was a good anti-Vandal ship. So and that was in 2946. So it's likely that the Perseus didn't enter full-scale production, at least in lore, until the end of the 2940s, possibly the beginning of the 2950s. I didn't reach civilian hands until 2955. Are there any more ship manufacturers we haven't seen we'll get to see that exist in the lore? Not that we know of. There are other manufacturers, but all of them have been defunct, like Case Aerospace, Elio Harmon Aerospace, these places, these ones don't exist anymore, but they did exist at one point. Oh, I thought it was the Vega battle. Yes, it was. It's not. It's the Oberon battle, which takes place a year after the Battle of Vega. What about Chevy and Toyota? No, just GM. As the long-standing tradition amongst sci-fi, GM survives. I really hope we get to see larger Kruger ships and Argo Salvager. We might. Did they bring back the Pontiac? By the way, that's a BattleTech joke. What do we know about the battle cruiser? Nothing. We know about the cruiser, which right now people are calling the Argus because, and I think that's just a bad line. Just sort of like it was intended and they swapped out the model and they just didn't change the line yet. But because he mentions an Argus in one of the earlier mentions of like moving things around, and he's pointing towards the escort carrier one. But we know that the escort carrier version and the cruiser version, which I'm calling the Integrity class, so it could be the Integrity class cruiser, are possibly some variations on the Bengal. And they have been around for at least some time now, because the Integrity was involved in a propaganda shoot in the 2930s, and the actual tour took place in the late 2920s, early 2930s. So we're talking like at least 30 years, if not longer. The Pegasus has no references other than the patch that's on John Rhys Davies' character's jacket. So the Pegasus could have been an escort carrier that existed in the UAE and has now been relegated to past history. We know it's big. Yeah. What was the significance of the Astromedics movie and its part in bringing the Apollo in verse? The Astromedics is a cheap B-movie drama movie series that's sort of like Grey's Anatomy. It's one part hospital drama, one part relationship drama. One part war movie. So it's like a war movie mixed with like a hospital, like typical like ER sort of Grey's Anatomy ER. What's the other hospital, like Hope Hospital or whatever it's called? MASH, yeah. It's MASH without the comedy. More dramedy, or more drama, more romance. Scrubs, yeah, no comedy though. So the Ibrahim sphere is a singular entity, or are there many? There are multiple Ibrahim spheres. Ibrahim spheres are copies of Vanduul technology that Dr. Akka Ibrahim was able to build off of prototypes or other templates he saw from the Vanduul. And it's basically a very advanced bioscanner. It can scan pretty much every part of your body and also somehow scan your consciousness and then link your consciousness with your body through interspace. Saying elsewhere, that's what I was thinking. In regards to the Wing Commander movie, CR was also forced to use the three main actors as they were on the rise, according to the studio. It killed Freddie Prinze Jr.'s acting career. Dang. Are the Vanduul the source of our regeneration tech? Yes. Regeneration is Vanduul technology. It's funny enough as well. Prince and Lillard both were in the Scooby-Doo movie, which was written by James Gunn. I love them for it. There are concept parts of the Pegasus. Yes, it was originally supposed to be part of Squadron 42. In fact, it was supposed to be the original ship for Squadron 42. You were supposed to start your career on a Pegasus, and then they changed that to the Stanton. So did the Vanduul use regen or something like it? We don't know. Possibly. Now, the technology we stole from the Vanduul is only the scanner technology. The actual ability to reprint a human being was created by Bioticorp, specifically making what they called regen serum, regen goo. And as far as we know, like in Star Citizen right now, the regen goo is in that canister with all of these other sort of medical applications. It is my belief, based off of my research, that the regen goo that allowed for regeneration to happen is the outcome of Project Calliope, which was the program that allowed for effectively outpatient surgery to change your appearance at any time, really like routinely, like down to almost your like gender entirely. What would take a team of surgeons like weeks to do, you could do in a couple of days with a automated tool. And that process was created for the UEE military and is the source of your Squadron 42 character creator, and it is the character creator in Star Citizen. I prefer serum to goo. It's called serum like in lore, but I call it goo and everyone else calls it goo because it's funny. Do you believe in the 2026 launch of Squadron 42? Yes. With a caveat. Last time I talked with anybody who worked with was working on Squadron, they were definitely like, yeah, we're bearing down, baby. We are absolutely bearing down on this. And they all were saying the same thing, 2026, 2026, 2026. It sounds like it's hell or high water moment that they're going to do it. Does that mean it's going to come out in like June of 2026? No. Almost certainly if it's coming out in 2026, it's coming out in like December of 2026. We all got that goo in you. They're calling the goo med gel. Yeah, I just called med gel now. How does death work in lore? So it depends. The Squadron 42 is a little different because Squadron 42 takes place before the invention of regen. But in 2949, the first successful regen occurred. So what happens is that if you are connected to a Ibrahim sphere, you are reborn into a new body. There's not like a can of clones that you can just like download your consciousness into, like altered carbon. Instead, your body is connected to your soul, for a lack of a better term, is connected to your imprint anywhere in the verse. And that imprint will stick for long periods of time. And if you're too far away for certain imprints, it will default to the like more recent ones. But the further you are away from a imprint and how long it's been since you were imprinted can cause what are called echoes. So echoes or trauma echoes are events that happen in your life and events that happen upon your death, which will imprint into your imprint. So if you lose your arm but don't die, or lose your arm before you die, you can wake up from a regen with an arm that doesn't function. It's basically your brain rejects the arm existing, and then you have to get an implant. And depending on how many times you die and how badly you die, they come up with a score which tells how long you have until you are completely unable to regen. And it's called your Imprint Viability Score, or IVS. That score will go down in various stages depending on lots of different factors. Quality of the regen bed you're using, the serum, the what is it called? How far away, how most recently you got your imprint, that kind of stuff. May 26, 2026, obviously. If I kill myself in Star Citizen, I'll be charged with murder. No. But you will be blackballed if it depends on how you backspaced yourself. I just got in. Are we talking about regen lore before CIG retcons it? What do you mean CIG retconning it? I don't know if CIG is going to be retconning this, the lore at all. Because if you die, even like right now, even though there's a distance limit, you just default back to where you were before. You don't just die and never come back. If you are imprinted into a location and you are too far away, you will default to your last location, which is what we know of in lore anyways. Do you think we can get some juicy info on dynamic server meshing this week with Benoit? Probably. Regeneration was always the plan, after all. Yes. Are we due for a new Imperator? Not until 2030. So 2960. Unless the current rumblings of impeaching and removing the current Imperator because of the Second Life Initiative go through. Remember that in May, GTA 6 is launching, probably. Yes. And CIG would best be stay the hell away from that release date. So December or maybe October, but I'm still thinking it's December, is not a bad date. They're changing the language in the latest medical docs. I'll read through it real quickly, but I didn't see that at all. They're not clones. You have imprints. Persistent belief that in the lore they say clones because like some developer who hasn't read the lore, who's only working on like the like coding, is like, well, they're called clones. It's like, no, that's not, because they don't even call the planets of Stanton by their names. They call them Stanton 1, 2, 3, and 4 because that's what they use in the code. So like, keep that in mind. I did an entire video on like why you shouldn't take some QAs or ship team members like word for like what's going on in Laura's canon. Most medical beds are 2 terminals. If you're regenerating after death, the bed will also provide you with information relating to that death. To place another person in a medical bed, simply drag them incapacitated body. I'm talking about med gel. Oh, it's actually inside the side of it now. It's interesting. Regeneration is a medical process which enables total restoration of your being after death via your DNA imprint recorded at the location you set. By default, your chosen regeneration location is a hospital with a primary residence, location you set when you first entered the verse. But as you travel the spaceways, you may want to transfer your imprint to a new location. This can be done through another hospital, clinic, or ship and vehicle that contains a medical bed that has sufficient med gel supply. There are 3 reasons your imprinted medical bed may fail to meet conditions for successful regeneration, causing you to regenerate back at your designated home location. Medical bed has been destroyed. The medical bed supply of med gel has been exhausted. Medical bed is outside the effective range. While most medical beds you encounter outside the hospitals are capable of imprinting and regenerating you into a new clone body, provided they meet the listed criteria. So they do mention clone, but it's important to remember that you're not cloned, you are recreated. Provided they meet the listed criteria below, are specific requirements for successful regeneration into bed. Holomedevac. Therapin. Oh, red, this vehicle, and then medevac. So I've also did an entire video on that. You cannot clone somebody using this technology. Mostly. Yeah, it's not, you're not copied, you're moved. We do know that people have been fucking with this. Specifically, one Dr. Yorit has been messing with this. And Dr. Yorit is doing some evil stuff. All I'm saying is in 431, be on the lookout for naked guys with guns in a medical facility in one of the, either the research wing or the medical wing. I think it's the medical wing. And there's an audio file which explains to you why there are multiples of the same person running around naked with a gun. Even better, the full science wing is in tonight. Nice. Yeah, science wing in the Onyx facilities. So basically, in current lore, there is no immortality, or if you don't die, you won't age. You will age. Because of the imprint connection between you, your body, and the imprint, every time you change, your body ages, you get older, it actually updates your imprint. So there is no way of returning back to a younger version of yourself every time you die. You're in fact gaining all of the age you had before you had died. And they've attempted to stop that, and they've failed. They've even attempted to try to regen somebody while they were still alive, and it didn't work. The connection process between the sphere and the person is so important that it supersedes all attempts to try to regen somebody. Doesn't work. So, and the reason why that happens is because Vandal technology. We have no fucking idea how this works. We're playing with God. So, Medical Wing's in there. Medical Wing has been in there for the last patch. It's just really difficult to get to. Be on the lookout for naked guys with guns. Totally expects Astro to be running around naked with a gun. All I was saying is I was very confused when I saw a naked man running around screaming to get away from me. It sounds a bit dumb and gameplay lore forced. Every single bit of lore is focused on gameplay. And the lore itself is built around the idea of gameplay, the gameplay functioning. It's a symbiotic relationship. So if CIG wants a semi-permadeath, then the lore comes up with a way that semi-permadeath works, and it's done in collaboration with the developers themselves to make it the most cohesive it could be, given the situation they have. Have you seen the new loading screen? This was Squadron mentioned. I have seen it a little bit. I know of the medical bay, but not of the medical wing. It's in the same location as the animal research area. There is an area that's called like medical research or medical bay or medical wing. It's not just like a small little kiosk. It's like a full-blown laboratory. I've never, okay. I thought you said I've heard of the Michael Bay. It's like, what? It's one of the floors of the original facility. Now, does it actually have any, yeah. It should be on the same floor as animal testing. I think they're connected to each other or adjacent from each other. Yeah, it's part of the research wings, but it specifically says, I think it might say research, but I'm pretty sure it said medical, because I remember seeing medical, I'm like, medical? What? I think we can get Michael Bay to direct Squad 42. People think it's hard to get there? No, I was just saying that not everyone necessarily would go there because there's no reason to go there. Unless you're exploring like I do. Unless you're like actually actively trying to find all the little secrets CIG held, then there's no impetus to go there. Yeah, there is the naked men. Yeah. Biomed stuff generally creeps me out. Most engaging content yet? Yes. I've always said that the thing about regen that would work the best is if they made it so it becomes a major plot point of the verse. Because you can't just insert something like regen in and just sort of say, well, this is how it works now. Because the society of the UEE did not work with that up to this point. So once it's been added into the society of basically, hey, you can extend life for an extreme amount of time and death doesn't really matter as much anymore, there are going to be social, cultural, economic consequences to that sort of thing. And CIG has leaned into that idea with the Second Life Initiative, which is nice, and with Dr. Yorit's experiments. Ooh. Alex was just joshing their coffee, that's all. It also helps that from my interview, I did an interview on my Lore Citizen podcast with Dave Haddock and specifically asked him a lot of it is about his personal stuff. And what we discovered was that Dave Haddock is a big horror movie fan. He's a big horror fan. And as a horror fan, I knew when he was talking about horror, I'm like, oh, we're going to see some horror elements in Star Citizen. And yeah, we're getting some horror elements in Star Citizen for sure. It helps that Alien and Aliens are heavily are major points of inspiration for Star Citizen. Handle human hybrids? Maybe. When do you think will give us all the previous mission system back? When the new mission system is fully updated. And they'll probably won't be all of them. They'll probably be updated and changed. All right, y'all. We went over what I was anticipating, but hopefully, and we kind of went all over the place a little bit, but hopefully you got a little bit of Odin, a little bit of Squadron 42 stuff as well as some Star Citizen. Thank you for watching. Thank you for hanging out. I will be back on Thursday for my my regular stream called The Office Hours, where we're going to be, I don't think, let me look it up real quick. This is sort of similar to this, but we specifically talk about the development. Where is that Star Citizen log? Thursday. So we'll probably look at the tech talk on September 11th, Thursday. So like when we go live, we'll actually like review the video and break it down and stuff like that. Yeah. Thank you for watching. Thank you for hanging out. And like I always say, remember, ex Historia ad Astra.